Ladies and gentlemen, President Trump has just made one of the biggest presidential power plays of all time. You see, late last evening, President Trump made the argument that all of Joe Biden's presidential pardons are, in fact, null and void because of the Democrats' use of an auto pen, a machine that perfectly emulates Joe Biden's presidential signature. That's right, folks. This is massive. We're talking about over 8,000 presidential pardons that Joe Biden supposedly signed, except, as it turns out, he might not have actually signed any of them. And if that's the case, then none of them are legitimate. Now, folks, we have a lot to talk about today regarding all of this, so hey, let's just kick things off by hearing from President Trump himself. The pardons that Sleepy Joe Biden gave to the Unselect Committee of Political Thugs and many others are hereby declared void, vacant, and of no further force or effect because of the fact that they were done using an auto pen. In other words, Joe Biden did not sign them, but more importantly, he did not know anything about them. The necessary pardoning documents were not explained to or approved by Joe Biden. He knew nothing about them, and the people that did may have committed a crime. Therefore, those on the Unselect Committee who destroyed and deleted all evidence obtained during their 2-year witch hunt of me and many other innocent people should fully understand that they are subject to investigation at the highest level. The fact is, they were probably responsible for the documents that were signed on their behalf without the knowledge or consent of the worst president in the history of our country, crooked Joe Biden. So folks, there you have it. But okay, really, what does all of this mean? Well, if someone used an auto pen in President Biden's place, possibly even without his knowledge, then nothing that he signed is actually legitimate. That includes every executive order, every piece of legislation he supposedly approved, and most importantly, all of the over 8,000 presidential pardons that were issued under his administration. And folks, let me tell you really why this is massive news. Because some of the names on Biden's pardon list include Hunter Biden, Dr. Anthony Fauci, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff, and many more. So folks, to put it lightly, if I received one of Joe Biden's presidential pardons, I would be sweating bullets right now. But folks, really this raises a massive legal question. If Biden didn't personally authorize these pardons, do they even count? Or better yet, was Biden even aware that these pardons were being handed out? Because let's be honest here, Joe Biden probably couldn't even remember who he was pardoning anyway. And I'll tell you what, if President Trump's argument here holds up in a federal court, all of these deep state swamp creatures are in big trouble. Now, folks, as it relates to all of this, there's another massive thing I want to talk about with you guys today. But first, I want to say real quick that if you guys enjoy the daily news coverage, please consider subscribing to the channel because it really does help a ton with my daily struggle against the YouTube algorithm. But okay, check this out. What you're about to watch is Speaker of the House Mike Johnson explaining in excruciating detail that, in fact, Joe Biden was not the one signing off on presidential orders. Take a look.
I do stand by it, and I say this without any personal animus at all. I mean, in some ways, I actually kind of feel sorry for Joe Biden. I mean, he's in the twilight years of his life. He is not, obviously, has not been in charge for some time. And I know this by personal observation, and now the whole world knows it, and it's been very concerning to me over the last, year and a half since I've had this position.
Can you tell us a story when you say personal observation? What kind
well,
of
I mean,
thing did you see?
it's public now because the Wall Street Journal got it and put it on the front page. But January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked. I became Speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on. And I started requesting a meeting with the president because, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept giving me excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill Press Corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him. Long story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, "The speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone?" And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, "Oh, no, he did it." So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office, right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, "Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, "Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago." And he goes, "No, I didn't do that." And he's arguing with me. I said, "Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that." And he goes, "Oh, you talk about natural gas." "Yes, sir." He said, No, you misunderstand." He said, "What I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG." I said, "No, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security." It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
So folks, that is exactly what we're talking about here. As it turns out, Joe Biden wasn't even the one running the country. In reality, our last national leader was whoever happened to have access to the auto pen inside of the White House. Folks, just think about how insane that is. In all likelihood, it was a bunch of nameless, faceless bureaucrats, really Joe Biden's handlers. They were the ones making presidential decisions without Joe Biden even knowing about it. And now, President Trump is calling everything into question. In fact, while speaking about President Trump, take a look at this.
So to follow up on the Biden auto pen, are those executive orders, those pardons from the former president now null and void?
Well, I think so. It's not my decision. That'll be up to a court. But I would say that they're null and void because I'm sure Biden didn't have any idea that it was taking place. And somebody was using an auto pen to sign off and to give pardons to, as an example, it's just one example, but the J6 Unselect Committee. They gave pardons with an auto pen. I don't think Biden knew anything about it.
So folks, once again, I really can't overstate just how big of a deal all of this is. Because if President Trump's argument holds up in court, then that means that every single pardon Joe Biden handed out is completely null and void. Because once again, that means that people like Hunter Biden, Anthony Fauci, Liz Cheney, and Adam Schiff are no longer protected. In fact, it probably means that they're all completely screwed. And you know what? If you ask me, it's about time. Because folks, let's be honest here, Biden's pardon list was nothing more than a get-out-of-jail-free card for most of the people in Washington, D.C. It was a reward for those who helped him push the left's radical agenda and cover up their failures. But now, as it would seem, President Trump has caught them all in the act. But now, folks, before we wrap up with today's video, I want to say real quick that I've actually gone ahead and made a community Facebook page where I'll be posting additional news and updates as it relates to all of this stuff. So if you guys use Facebook, check out the pinned comment down below and give that page a follow. But everyone, that is going to be a wrap for today's video, so please go down below and drop a comment. Please like the video while you're down there. Like I said earlier, please consider subscribing to the channel if you enjoy the daily news coverage. Thank you all very much for tuning in today, and as always, stay safe.